And this is the first AM 101 that I'm not just hosting, but that I'm actually doing. So that's kind of an interesting place for me to be. Nick's going to monitor the chat. So if you have questions, then you can ask. I do see that Donna Medina has one. That meeting on that Wednesday is 3 p.m. to 4:30, Donna. That's the mentoring meeting. Anyway, bear in mind that this meeting is going to be recorded, so please keep your mics off and put your questions in the chat. We'll try to go through them as they come up so that we don't move on too far away from them by the time we get to them. And then also I will send everybody who registered for this meeting, including those of you who are here, the follow-up email, which will have a link to the recorded meeting. And there will also be meeting materials, which I'm going to show you. I'll be sharing my screen with you on those. So I am going to pull them up right now. And start sharing my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Excellent. So I'm going to start with a couple of tips and tricks to make this easy. I will say I'm the person who certifies core standards for everybody in California, all the locals. And there's such a varying degree of what comes in. So they kind of start trickling in like in August, and then some of them go all the way up to Christmas. So I'm going to try and get everybody on board. And I'm going to start by telling you, set a goal in your mind to have your core standards finished by August 31st. And I know that sounds really daunting for some of you, but I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to help you do that. And we're going to work on getting them done earlier. And then if you have like your financial review, let's say, isn't until October, you'll have everything done except that, and then you can get that done. So I guess the first thing I'm going to say is don't wait, start early. And NAR has released the new form, so you can get into it. You don't have to start filling it out right now, but at the very least, get yourself a folder or folders. Some people prefer paper, so you can do paper folders, but I think your best bet, honestly, because you need to submit PDFs, is to get folders on your computer, and you can get as specific as you want. You can have one folder that says core standards and then just label them as well as you can, or you can also do separate folders for section 1, section 2, section 3, and have them in those folders already. You also should consider assigning staff, if you have staff, to some of these areas. And just some of the thoughts are, like, if you have a GAD, assign them to section 2, which is advocacy, or if you have somebody that does community relations or communications, give them section 3, which is the consumer section, things like that. You can have your business manager do all of the financial things. Your pro standards person can do section 1, which is ethics. So get those assigned out to your staff so that you're not doing everything. And that's a great idea. And they have all the items for their sections, so it'll be easier to keep track of. The last thing I want to say, and this is a super common problem, to get into your form, you go to nar.realtor, and the credentials that you use for that, your username and your login, are the ones for nar.realtor, not your M1 POE access. So if you put in your M1 POE access credentials, you will not be able to get in. Okay, then once you're ready to start, I would suggest that you print out the form so that you can make notes on it. I will be sending everybody a PDF of last year's form, because this year the form can only be printed out by section. It will be easier for you to make notes and make the old form a checklist, because it's just one set of questions. And then as you finish off the questions, cross them out or highlight the ones that you need to go back to. It's much less daunting to have something in front of you than to just have this cluster of questions. You know, there's like 67 questions, and not really have a handle on what you've done and what you haven't. And the more you've knocked off your list, obviously, the less anxiety that you're going to feel about it. Next step, go through your form and fill out all the easy questions. Put aside an hour or 2 hours, whatever you feel like you need, and fill out when your bylaws were approved and who your attorney is, and just all of the lowest hanging fruit that doesn't require any events to happen, or even some of the ones that don't require any documentation. You're going to find that you'll fill out about half your form just by doing that. And again, it makes for less anxiety when you know that half of your form is already done and you've only invested an hour or two in it. Also, read the words in the questions. This is probably one of the biggest problems that we've had. And I know we all joke, RDR realtors don't read, but neither do AEs or staff. So read the words in the questions. One of the things I'm finding is like some of the questions are 3 parts. So if it says, like CoreLogix, like it, take a screenshot. Post one of the articles from it. Show that you've posted it. Encourage your members to repost it and share it. 3rd part of the question. The other one that happens very often is sometimes it'll say, share this with the media. Sharing it with your members is not the same thing. So read the question and make sure that you get all the parts in. By the way, I cannot see the chat. So Nick, if there's any questions that come up in the chat, will you just interrupt me, please? Thanks. So the other thing is make sure you print out at least the last 2 years or have access to the last 2 years forms. They're all archived on there. A lot of the questions don't change from year to year. For instance, your professional standards information, your attorney, your financial policies, those kinds of things. Don't go looking for them and reinvent the wheel. Just rip them right off last year's or the year before's forms, and that will help you get through some really quickly too. Another thing is not reinventing the wheel. And obviously, we want you to do the very best events and activities for your members that you possibly can, but don't struggle to put on a job fair when all you need to do is post something on Twitter. Right? So don't always just go for the lowest hanging fruit, but honestly, if you're struggling with a section, there's lots of low hanging fruit. And if you're not sure what they are, I will be more than happy to pick some of them out for you. Obviously, one of them is that House Logics thing that I talked about earlier, but don't reinvent the wheel. You don't need to pass with an A or an F. You just need to pass. So it's just pass fail. So don't feel like you need to host a series of really arduous events. Let's see. It's also a great idea to provide more than the minimum. So in sections 2 and 3, which are advocacy and consumers, and community, those each require 2 activities or events. If you have done 18, I'm not going to look through all 18, but if you can provide more than 2, it's always a great idea because sometimes an event or an activity won't qualify. And if I can just move on to the next one, then that would be really great. The other thing is sometimes people get vote, act, and invest mixed up. So let's say you did 4 invest, but you only did 2 act and one of them doesn't qualify. If I can pull one from invest and just move it up, that's a lot easier than having to go back and have you find another one. The other thing is, and again, this is about not reinventing the wheel, piggyback on state, local, and national events. Most of the things just require either that you sponsor one of them or that you advertise one of them. If you're a small association, you can't put on a DEI event, just advertise some of NAR's events that are happening, or if FARA is doing an event with one association and you can all piggyback on that, that would be a great way to get those things taken care of. Once you're ready to submit, this is really a big one, and I only had a couple of associations do it, but don't hit the submit button until you've emailed me and asked me to go over the form. Most of the forms are not really ready on their first go round, and there's a thing or two that need to be tweaked. If you hit the submit button, it goes to NAR, then NAR is notified, C.A.R. is notified, and your leadership's notified. If you have something on that form that is not correct, I have to send it back to you. And then your leadership and C.A.R. and NAR know that you turned in a form that wasn't fully correct. And we really want to avoid that. The last thing in this section is, again, please do not wait until the last minute. Spare yourself that anxiety. And in all honesty, the farther it gets into December, the crabbier I get with people who haven't submitted their form. And you don't want me to be crabby when I go over your form. So get them in early. Alicia's laughing because we used to work together and she knows exactly what I mean. Okay, now on to the FAQ. And I am not going to go through this line by line, but having been through a year's worth of certifications, I kind of know where a lot of the issues lie in this arena. So core standards deadline, you know, is December 31st. And I have to continue to certify through December 31st. But we're making our deadline for first submission November 30th. Now, again, I'm going to tell you, you know, I have to continue to certify through December 31st, but if you can get them in no later than November 30th, that would be most appreciated. And it will also save you the angst of having to do things last minute when you should really be Christmas shopping and planning your installation and your Christmas party and all those other things that happen at the end of the year. Just get your core standards over with. There's a link to the core standards form, of course, and then the new things on the 2022 form. There's not much new, so that's great news. They have been renumbered and they're formatted differently. So now you only get one section at a time and you can click through the sections. For me, that makes it easier because in all honesty, I know what's in every section, but it's going to be more difficult for those of you who haven't done too many forms because you're not going to remember like, oh, where is my financial blah, blah, blah. So there's going to be a little bit more on that. They've also been renumbered, and the biggest part of the renumbering is very simple. So on the calls to action for NAR and state, they used to just have an A in front of them if there were no calls to action. So it was whatever they were, like 13A and 14A. Well, now they have their own number, so it made everything renumber. So I've updated the FAQ to go with that. Also, I discovered and let them know that the DEI and Fair Housing event, which was formerly number 59A and is now going to probably be 61, it got left off the form by accident. So NAR is going back to their people who handle the form and they're adding that in. So don't be surprised when you don't see it, but ultimately you're still going to have to do it. So now just getting into the body of the form. There's some trick questions in here. And the first one is number one, is my association responsible for tracking the NAR Code of Ethics? The answer is yes, it's a trick. You have to. So I'm not even sure why they put that on there, maybe just to make you aware, but you have to answer that question, yes. You don't have to have a professional standards committee if you work with a multi-board or regional professional standards. I just heard at AEI that Connecticut is making their professional standards a statewide thing. So of course, we've dropped that little dime on Brian to see if we can get that done, which will make that question even easier. Question number 4 is where you put in the link on your website that leads to the Code of Ethics and Professional Standards. So for that, there is a specific link that they want to see. I did learn halfway through doing the form that the California one is also acceptable, which I didn't realize until, again, halfway through the cycle. So either one of those is fine on your website, and I've provided both of them. Just make sure one of them is on your website and that they work, obviously, because we all did this last year. They should all be correct. NAR does require mediation. Oh, Nick?
Yes, we have a question in the chat from Bobby. She says, well, Ooh, it says if we have items marked and uploaded on the form now, and when an AR revises the form to add DEI, will you lose anything you have already saved?
Bobby, I don't know. I thought about that, but I'm imagining that no, but I will check with them. I will check and get back to you. That'll be on the follow-up. I think we'll be okay. I think it'll be saved. I can't imagine that they'd throw that kind of a monkey wrench at us, but you never know. So yes, mediation is required. You don't have to have an ombudsman. You can use the C.A.R. ombudsman. You don't need to have a citation policy, but you can. Advocacy. So you have to have above the line billing, but by the grace of God, C.A.R. requires above the line billing. So everyone in California passes this one. They like to see a screenshot of what you had approved by Lisa Edwards. You can use the one that you had approved for 2022, which you would have done probably in November. So make sure you get that in your folder. But then Lisa also provides me with a list of everybody, which again, because you have to have it, the list is everybody. So if you can't find it for some reason, just let me know and I'll make sure you're on the list. And then for 14 and 15, just 10 and 9, just put NA. Let's see. With the RPAC, you don't need to provide any proof. Just put where you put RPAC materials. It's that's kind of a fluffy question. NAR calls for action. We haven't had any this year, but your GAD would know. Anytime you get a call for action, whether it's state or national, you have to do it. Make sure you screenshot it and stick it in your folder so that it doesn't become an issue. I know last year we had one from C.A.R. and none from NAR, and there were people that didn't know where they were. Going to that for the state calls of action, we did have one already in January, but it was a limited one. And so I've listed the counties that were involved in that. If you're in one of these associations, make sure that you have that on your form. Right now, for everybody else, it would technically be that there were no calls for action, but if between now and when you turn in your form, there are calls for action, you'll have to include that. If you miss a call for action, this happens once in a great while. Somebody will miss a call for action. You just need to put a post on your Facebook or in your newsletter or whatever it happens to be. And it's just recommending that people sign up for legislative liaisons and that they do calls for action, and I provided a link to that. So if you happen to miss it, you'll need to post that. If you don't miss the calls for action, you can completely ignore that. Next comes the advocacy events, and that is your vote, act, and invest. This is something that a lot of people have mixed up. So if you have a GAD, your best bet is to allow them to do this section because they totally get it. Vote is specific to elections, encouraging voting, listing your polling places, registering to vote, independent expenditures, that kind of thing. It's very specific to vote. It is not meeting with your legislators for updates. It is not going to Ledge Day. It is specifically about elections and election activity. ACT is a really broad category, and I will tell you, everyone blows this one out of the water because there are so many things that you can do. Again, you only need 2, but it's really not hard to do 6. It's such an easy one. Invest is actually specific to RPAC, although in California we call it RAF. And this encompasses also raising money for candidates who are realtor champions. So anytime you can get anything for RAF investments, if you distribute RAF brochures, if you have one of your field reps come out, they always talk about vote, act, and invest. And so if in any of these 3 categories you're missing something, anytime your GAD or your field rep comes out and talks to your group, or even at like a new member orientation, then you can use that there too as well. The next section is consumer outreach, and that section has a lot of stuff in it. The first section is voice of real estate. So this is one that, again, people have gotten confused in the past. So I listed some questions. Obviously, these are not going to be relevant to you until you look at the form. But what they're asking for is that you reach out to local media. So voice of real estate, to your community, to media. It's not putting these messages out to your members. So it's specific to media. And again, not on your Facebook or whatever, always going to media. 22 and 24, again, this is one where they're asking you to post something and then telling you to share it with your client, telling your clients to share it to your members to share it with your clients. So don't just show a post of something that you put out or an infographic. Make sure you say, members, this is great to share with your clients, or you can put it in your newsletter or whatever it happens to be. Then the consumer section on your website, this is really a good thing to have anyway. And to be honest with you, if you do this or you have it, and many of you already have it, that's one of your voice of real estate in every single year. You only have to do one more qualifying event if you have this. So you need to have at least 4 things for a bare minimum. And NAR gives you some suggestions. It's super easy to do, how you choose a realtor and links to things and some house logics and whatnot. The second section of this is community involvement. And again, this is where you need 2 qualifying events or activities. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because there's, excuse me, many things you can do for this. I think the biggest thing is that people don't realize is you cannot just give a check to somebody and have it count for in this section. You have to actually have an event, sponsor an event, do something that has to do with community involvement besides just giving a check to a local organization. So that's one of the mistakes that we've seen. So just make sure that you have some events on here or do some of the other things, which again, also include posting things for your people to post and whatnot. Okay, getting on to section 4. Your bylaws need to be certified annually. They were supposed to have been certified by March 1st. If you haven't done it, you still can. I have the link. It's a very simple process. It's like literally checking a couple of boxes and submitting. That's all you need to do. And they just want the date. It does say, I think on this one that it autofills. It doesn't. So you need to fill it in. And this is only in years when they make changes, which they did actually this year. The next question, 49 and 50, are regarding MLS bylaws and rules and regs. If you are part of a large MLS, Barry's, Metro List, C.A.R. MLS, any of those, your MLS will do this for you. C.A.R. MLS provides their associations with the dates. Barry's and Metro List do not. So if you're with one of those 2, just make sure you let me know that someone else is doing it. Some of them I'll remember from last year, but many of them I will not. So, and if you run your own MLS, then you need to actually get them certified annually. Question 51. You cannot use the C.A.R. legal hotline as your attorney. C.A.R. legal is only for members. So if you don't have an attorney on retainer, it's okay. You just need to put down contact information for an attorney that you could contact if you had an issue. Also, you can't predate things. So if you don't have your taxes done by the time you submit, you have to wait until you do get your taxes done. So don't wait. Same thing with your review. Oh, I'm jumping ahead, so let's wait on that. Corporate docs. I think everyone's got this one down now, but if you're brand new, you might not know. Every other year, you have to do your statement of information with the Secretary of State. So if you did it last year, you don't need to do it again this year. But if you look on your form from last year and see what the date is, if it's not from 2021, you need to do it. And I gave you the link to do it. It's very simple. And if you have any problems with it, you can just get with me. Question 54, the strategic plan. This is one that I think some people kind of slipped on last year. So you have to get your strategic plan looked at by your board every single year. What you needed to add last year, and we didn't check it, we took your word for it, but you need to make sure that it's in there, is that you have, we already know that you have an advocacy component and a consumer outreach component, because back in the day, NAR used to certify your strat plans. So those would have already been in it. They don't certify them anymore, thank God. This last year, you were supposed to add a DEI component and a fair housing component. Super easy to do. You can basically just add those words to some of your other components of your strat plan, like that your board is going to work towards more diversity, or that you're working with fair housing. It's pretty easy to do. Now that the initial component is added, if you want to add something meatier, then great, because obviously this is an ongoing issue with us, but at the very least, you need to have the words in there. Professional development. I can tell you right now, everyone in California has already met this question. Every one of you has already met it. If you went to AEI, that's all that's required. If you didn't go to AEI, all you need is a combination of 6 AE town halls, or president's town halls, or AM 101s. This is one that you can skate through. You've already done it. Just get them in there. You don't need proof of any of them, because I know if you were there or not. I have lists of everybody who attended whatever they attended. Again, this is so easy to skate through. Don't make it brain surgery. For the professional development for your members, I know some people took the lowest hanging fruit and put in, we had Revy out for a license renewal course. That's kind of something that you have to do anyway. So try to go for anything a little bit bigger than that, even a town hall like with Gov, or any educational opportunity that you offer. If somebody does a lunch and learn in your association, if you offer MLS training, anything you have, risk management attorneys come in, anything like that. You only need one. I mean, I'm sure you all are doing tons of them. With the safety activity, that again is something that you need to do, as well as DEI. Go ahead and work together. I know last year, lots of you worked together on these and did events. You could do it by your region, or I know there were some events that I can't even remember, but 25 associations sponsored some of the events. Just get your logo on that and just post a screenshot of it, and you're good to go. Leadership development, again, this is another really easy one to do. You can talk to your board about DEI training. You can talk to them about core standards. Either of the leadership academies that C.A.R. and NAR do. A board orientation is another great way to do leadership development. So this is super easy to satisfy. You are required to have a policy for your review for your AE. So it is required that you have one. And when you turn in your core standards, as long as your review was less than a year from the day you turned it in, you're fine. So a lot of people get their reviews in November and December. You don't have to wait till that review is done. If you want to turn your core standards in on August 31st and your last review was last year in November or December, you're covered. You just have to have one annually. So then you'll use this year's for next year if you do it that way. So don't let that hold you up. I think the technology section is kind of a joke. So you just have to put in your URL. If you're for your website, if you're getting your site redone, just put in whichever is operational at the time you submit your form, because I'm just going to take a look and make sure that you actually have that website. So no worries about that. I know we had one association where their website crashed. And so all I took was a letter from GoDaddy that said the website is down, and we put up the proper URL and then just added that letter.
Peggy, quick question.
Yes.
Someone asked, so 6 hours of, like for the 6 hours of professional development, if an assistant to the AE attends either AEI or one of the town halls, can that be counted for this? Like what's defined as chief paid staff?
No, it cannot. It has to be the CEO or the AE. Thanks, Nick. Financial policies. I know if you're brand new, you don't know where these are. They're on your form from last year. So it's super easy. Just rip it off and then make sure you put it in your core standards folder so you know where it is for next year. Your review. So we all know that NAR used to accept letters of engagement. They no longer do. So schedule your review early. You cannot be certified for core standards if you haven't had your review done. So please schedule it early. I know we had some people really scrambling last year. It's March and we know about it. Just get it scheduled. And then again, once you get your core standards done, you just need to email me, let me know, and I will review your form. And once it's all set and it's done, let me review it one very last time if there were changes. And then you click submit. Oh, before you click submit, your president and your president-elect are supposed to look at it. Operative word, supposed to. And then you click, it submits to NAR. And then as soon as I get the notification that NAR has it, because I just looked at it, I approve it immediately and you're done for the year. And they send you a very unceremonious email that says your state has approved your core standards. Usually once I see that, I send you one with fireworks on it because it's more glorious than just a boring email like that. And then the last things on the FAQ are just resources that I have. So really, I just took them all off a variety of websites. So if there's anything you need on these, many of them go to specific questions. So there's all kinds of resources for you beyond what is in the body of this FAQ. So for anything you need, and you'll all get this. I know I see some of you taking notes. You will all get this form. So you're good to go with all that. And that is all I have. I'm going to stop the share and open it up to questions. Anybody?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Sharon. I always get confused about the vote, act, invest. And last year, I think it was like I combined two things in one email, and so I could only count it for one. So what do you suggest is the best way to deal with that?
So I remember yours specifically. So Sharon did a, here's where you register to vote, and then here's all the polling places. So all I need is two separate posts, one that says, here's where you register to vote, and here are the polling places. So
Okay.
I think I might have passed you on that anyway, but they really want to see like two activities or events. So if you can separate them, that's great. Like the other thing is when your field rep comes out, they talk about vote, act, and invest, but you can only use that one event on one of those three. You can't use it for all three.
Right.
Yeah, so the more you do, the better in those cases. And this is an election year, so it'll be a little bit easier. Although last year we had the governor's recall, so everybody had some pretty low-hanging fruit on that.
Right. Thank you.
You
Maybe
bet.
the question in the chat.
Yes.
Does professional standard certification count for professional development?
Yeah, but it's not the best choice, Sue. I would use because you have to do it, and most of you certified once, you're just recertifying, so it's not really it's pretty low hanging fruit. I would use the AM 101s or the town halls instead. Christy, do we have to include? No, you do not have to include both. You can include both links for C.A.R. and N.A.R. Code of Ethics and Professional Standards, but only one is necessary, and that's all I look for. And again, as soon as I find one, I kind of stop looking. So one of the mistakes I've noticed that people make on this too is they put a link to the actual Code of Ethics. That is not the link that we're looking for. We're looking for the one that says Code of Ethics and Pro Standards. So that's what they're looking for. Anybody else? New people, don't be afraid to ask questions. I know for the new people, I kind of went through these a lot. We went over and over and over them. And for the newest people, we'll be doing that a lot. So I want to teach you how to do it right. Anybody else?
Peggy, encouraging members to attend the virtual legislation day that we did back in March, would that go under invest?
No, that would go under ACT.
Act. Thank you.
Yeah, Ledge Day is a great one. By the way, do you all know that you can use your ALF funds, ALF, to get your people to Ledge Day? You can use it for your transportation there and back, and 2 nights hotels and a day's worth of food. Enrique, first time in the meeting. So in the FAQ, you'll see there's a link to core standards, but all you have to do is go onto nar.realtor. And if you put in the search core standards, it will bring up that form. And the only people who can see the form right off the bat are the AE or CEO, the president and the president-elect. So if you are staff, your AE needs to actually add you to that form in order for you to be able to see it. Susie, 2 nights a hotel. I thought it was just 1 too, but I heard that it might be 2. We are doing a coffee meetup with Rick Laisman for the new AEs in a couple of weeks, and I will clarify whether it's 1 or 2 on that one.
I think it, Peggy, this is Bobby. I think it depends on your distance to
Oh, that makes
Sacramento.
sense. That makes sense. So Susie, that's why it would only be 1, because we were close. When we add our professional standards and CEO website, if we have 2 different URLs, is it okay using 1? You know what, Wendy, can you get with me offline on that, Peggy M at CAR.org, because I'm not sure. I'm probably just 1 is fine. The truth is that I think NAR only spot checks these forms. So when I do them, I want to make sure that our forms are perfect, because if they spot check one of ours and it's wrong, you get in trouble, and so do I for approving it. So, but the honest truth is I don't think they go down every rabbit hole. I'm sure they don't. Anybody else? Oh, am I going to give you back 20 minutes of your day? Is that what's going to happen right now? Don't be afraid. Raise your hand, unmute, ask in the chat. Many of you have done this so many times. Okay, so on a parting note, you can contact me anytime about any question, especially those questions like Bobby asked about Vote, Act, Invest. Those seem to be the ones that are the most confusing for people. I am more than happy to be proactive with you so that when it comes time to review your form, everything's where it needs to be, and you're not sweating. Like one AE said to me, please give me a good review because my heart can't take anything less. Let's be proactive and get everything, ready. And oh, thanks everybody. Everybody will get a copy of the FAQ and the tips, as well as a copy of last year's form, so that you have something that you can mark up. Again, if you have it so that you're crossing things off and you can actually look at a list of what you've got done, there's so much less anxiety than just having this form that's partly filled out, because you'll always think that you had more to do than you actually do. So let's make this easy. And remember, everybody, August 31st. Thanks everybody for attending.